Hello, Nostalgia Merchant. Yes, I sent you $2, but I have not received my catalog of the latest video classics on Beta 2 and VHS. Well, I would like to know more about your superb quality cassettes manufactured from the finest preprint available. You've been out of business since 1988. Well, no one told me. Sorry about that. Goodbye. It was about time we looked back in the VHS collection, and this time I thought, let's do something a little different. Let's look at VHS tapes from before 1985, some of the oldest VHS tapes I own, and many of which were printed before VHS or watching films at home really even became a thing. Now, I've talked about some of these before, so I won't repeat myself. I have a series of videos on CBS Fox VHS releases. They are big fan favorites here on Betamax Blocker. Some of their early releases, like this African Queen VHS from 1983, come in the slidey tray box. You can check out my CBS Fox video to see more of my classics from that line. Another brand I've discussed, MGM UA's book-like boxes, or big boxes, or coffin boxes. They have many different nicknames. Here's Woody Allen's Manhattan, a film that has not aged particularly well. Also from the early 80s here, I should say the VHS the movies from the late 70s, but we've talked about these as well. I have a whole video on my MGM big box collection. And I've also talked about Key Video. This tape of Sayonara isn't from before 1985, but it's pretty close. But I've talked about these before, so I went around through my collection, I dug up some more early titles that I had, things that were, being sold or rented or marketed long before most people even had a VCR in their homes. And I thought, let's take kind of a historical journey today and begin at or near the beginning with a little company called Magnetic Video. Magnetic Video was one of the first, if not the first, of all the home media companies to put out classic films on tape. They struck a deal of some kind with 20th Century Fox, licensed many titles. I'll hold that up for you so you can see some of that list there. Quite a few classics, many of which will be re-released under the 20th Century Fox label later. A lot of films in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and some Charlie Chaplin things. This tape of Love is a Many Splendored Thing is from 1977. So Love is a Many Splendored Thing, classic romance set in China, Best Picture nominee in 1955, William Holden in that. Definitely a classic film. Really neat though to have these old style boxes, a little window at the bottom there. You can see there, got the title list. And Magnetic Video would be defunct by the early 80s, about 1982, but they definitely saw the potential in having films readily available on pre-recorded cassettes, all prepared for home consumption. I think they started with rental only, but eventually evolved into retail sale. Very interesting. I love these old style boxes. Someday I'll look at my 20th Century Fox VHS tapes so we can compare the box art of that to this. But I thought for today, that'd be a good place to start. Also from 1977, 1956 film Anastasia with Ingrid Bergman. She even won an Oscar for that. Very similar in design to the last one. Another classic. Both of these still work, by the way. Next up on our list, this tape was printed in 1978, but nonetheless, still another great 1950s film, Carmen Jones. Dorothy Dandridge's most famous film, I would say, adapting the opera Carmen into like a World War II setting. I don't think she did her own singing though, but still very interesting. Love all the old style logos and things on the boxes. One I have that's kind of unusual, probably some video rental store, some such thing, took a copy of Magnetic Video's All About Eve, cut it up there, and put it into like a clamshell case. You can see it's a regular black one. But interestingly, when I bought this, the correct tape was not inside. This looks like somebody's home video they're recording different movies off TV or something, but they took the time to actually type them out on the labels. I don't know, was that a thing? When I was growing up and we recorded movies and shows, we always bought the stickers and wrote on them with pen or pencil. So it was unusual to see one that was typed up. Thought I'd show that. This would probably fall into the sold as blank category. You know, at my local thrift store, I think this was a quarter, maybe 50 cents at the outside, but something a little bit different. I don't know. Now, two video movies aren't uncommon. You know, think of Gone with the Wind. It had to be on two separate VHS tapes. Lawrence of Arabia, Schindler's List, anything along those lines. And we would usually see the wide box with two tapes in it. But this early on, this tape from The Lion in Winter, also from 1978, they actually had two matching boxes. Sadly, my copy only has one. Two matching boxes, you'd have two separate cassettes kind of side by side on your shelf to represent one movie. And that would be changed in the 80s and into the 90s into having one larger box that could hold two tapes. So magnetic video, while mostly forgotten today, kind of pioneered the sale of famous films on home video. And like I said, love these retro boxes. All these tapes still work. I'm going to keep them for as long as I can anyway. A lot of fun there. And definitely relics of the past, but relics that are greatly appreciated. So let's kind of move on a little bit and look at a different type of two-tape set. Judy Garland in 1954 starred in a remake of A Star is Born, the original from 1937. Today the one with Lady Gaga is still very popular, quite rightfully. It's a very good film. My favorite, still the 1930s one, but this one I think has kind of transcended just being a film classic because of its difficult production, and there are multiple edits and restorations and so on, but I had to show this off just because of the weird box that it's in. So if you open this up, there's a flap. Talks about the production of the film and how this is a restored version. I doubt this is still the restored version. This tape's from about 1983. So I'm sure they've found more footage since then. And then we have, laying down inside the box, one cassette and a second cassette. So the tapes lay down inside here. And then if you lift up these flaps, they have all the information. I'll show you kind of a spread of the box there. And double check my year, which I think, yep, 1983, I was right. So, very interesting set there. Today, the 50s version of The Star is Born, probably remembered mostly for Judy's singing, particularly the song The Man That Got Away. Definitely a classic. So I thought I'd show that off. I think the only VHS I have in a giant box like this, but it's a really cool display piece. Really like having that. Moving on again, one of my all-time favorite films. I never knew the old Vienna before the war, with its Strauss music, its glamour, and its easy charm. Constantinople suited me better. Let's take a look at this old 1982 VHS tape of The Third Man, the classic mystery thriller set in post-war Vienna involving the sale of bootleg, watered-down, black market penicillin, so on like that. Orson Welles is Harry Lime, one of cinema's most charming villains. He doesn't have a huge part, but the few scenes he has, he really makes an impact. I love The Third Man, and for many years I named it as my favorite film. I don't know if I would anymore. It does have some slow stretches, and there are a couple performances that kind of grate on you as time goes on. But all told, great film. Criterion would remaster this shortly after, and they have a DVD of it. I know it's been put out on Blu-ray by, I don't think it's Criterion, I think it's a different company, but a film that has a international cast and a huge following, and of course that classic zither theme, which I think a lot of people know even without having seen the film. Definitely worth it there. So I like this old VHS release because it actually features the American edit of the film. The opening and end credits are formatted differently. Joseph Cotton's narration is used in place of Carol Reed's and so on. Some interesting differences there. And for someone who had seen the film on Turner Classic Movies and whatnot, finding this tape with this alternate edit was a lot of fun. It even does something kind of unusual and uses third with a number instead of spelling out the ordinal term there. Very interesting. Gotta love it. Another Orson Welles film, but one where he gets to star, not play a supporting part. Here's an old Republic VHS tape of Welles' controversial 1948 adaptation of Macbeth. Now this was printed 1985. It's the only one from 1985 I'm going to talk about today. I wanted to go 1985 or earlier. Maybe we'll look at pre-1990 tapes another day. Macbeth was met with a lot of confusion and a lot of dislike. I think it's really interesting and kind of has like noir elements to it. Apparently there are two versions, one where everyone speaks in a fake Scottish accent and one where they don't. This one does not have the fake Scottish accents. I don't even know if that's readily available or what, because as with many of Orson Welles' films, production was a challenge. But he's got a great cast. Yes, he streamlines and simplifies the story because it's Shakespeare and sometimes it needs streamlined and simplified. But I like his version of Macbeth. It's not one that gets talked about too much, but he does a good job. And he's quite believable, I think, as the title character. Last but not least, let's talk about a company that almost dominated, I think, in the 80s. Nostalgia Merchant. Like Magnetic Video, one of those early groups that jumped on the bandwagon really quickly and cornered the market for quite some time, here is their VHS release of Kitty Foyle from 1982. Kitty Foyle today is best remembered for giving Ginger Rogers her Oscar. She got Best Actress for this film, and she's quite good in it too. I don't think it's her best movie, but she gets a lot to work with here. And she doesn't always go for laughs like something like The Major and the Minor, where it's predominantly funny. She gets a chance to do a lot of drama as well. It's a very basic story though. I don't know how appealing this would be to a modern audience. Nice to have it, and I love the picture collage. And in case you weren't sure, that phony baloney nonsense I did at the beginning is from the catalog advertisement on the back of the box. So pretty cool stuff. This tape, unfortunately, conked out on me not too long ago. To see if I can clean it somehow. And lastly, still on the subject of Nostalgia Merchant, well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into. Gotta talk about Laurel and Hardy, in this case in Pardon Us. Now, a lot of Laurel and Hardy's stuff was released to home video by Nostalgia Merchant in the 1980s. Here's one of their short subject VHS tapes. And sometime this year, I want to do a home video history of Laurel and Hardy, like I did for Universal Monsters, or the Three Stooges. But I need to get a derby, first of all, to wear on my head. And there's a few odds and ends that I want to hunt down first, before I make that. This tape is from later in the 80s. We're not going to talk about the short subject series today. But we are going to talk about a Laurel and Hardy tape from 1982, their first feature film, Pardon Us. Pardon Us was released in different edits and different versions. The fancy DVDs that eventually came out in the US, because it took a long time for the US to get most of Laurel and Hardy's films on DVD. It took decades, actually. But it uses a different edit, a different print than this VHS does. So some of these old Stan and Ollie tapes are still very much collector's items because they have unique copies of the films. Now, this has the shortened ending where Stan and Ollie use a Tommy gun to put down the prison riot simply by frightening all the other prisoners and whatnot. It doesn't have the ending with the jail on fire and whatnot, June Marlowe needing rescued, that kind of stuff. Not in here. A lot of Laurel and Hardy's movies were released in edited form on VHS. Someday I'll talk about the Video Treasures releases and we'll go through the edits and the missing footage and whatnot. But I wanted to show this off because I think this remains an exclusive edit of this particular Stan and Ollie film. And Pardon Us is a fun one. It's not their best by any means, but it shows that they could definitely handle doing a feature film. Indeed, I believe it started as a couple short subjects that just kind of got strung together and then evolved into a feature, but a lot of fun, and has some great gags in it, and the Three Stooges would remake it as Beer Barrel Polecats. Well over a decade later, actually 15 years later. Pretty cool stuff. So do you have any home media, relics from before 1985? If you do, go ahead and talk about them in the comments, and I'll see you next time for some more Beach Boys and movie stuff. Go out there and don't get into another fine mess.